In lesson 12.4, we're going to complete the square. And what that means is that we're going to take a polynomial function here, and we're going to try to solve it when it normally wouldn't factor. So it's really, this is just a way to work around the quadratic formula. So a perfect square trinomial, remember trinomial means 3 terms, so it looks like this. The first part of your assignment is going to ask you just to complete the perfect square trinomial. So we're going to take something like these examples here where it's just a binomial. It's not a trinomial yet. You want to add an answer onto the end of the function so that this would be a perfect square trinomial. This is the tricky part here to remember. All right, so we're trying to figure out what's this number c that would add on to the end. And here's how we figure it out. We take half of our b and square it. So half of 20 is 10, and then I square that and get 100. So to complete this, I would add 100, and this would be the answer. Because this would factor to be x plus 10 times x plus 10, which is x plus 10 squared, so it's a perfect square. That's just showing you what we did here, but this part that's inside the box is your answer. So now in the next one, I just want to complete the trinomial. So I take half of this, which is -7, square it, and that would give me 49. So I would say add 49 onto the end, and now it's a perfect square. Now what happens if you have an odd number? Well, leave it as a fraction. Okay, half of 9 is 9/2, because it's much easier to square a fraction than it is to square a decimal, because I just square each one separately. So 9 squared is 81, and 2 squared is 4. So just leave it as plus 81/4. Okay, so now we're going to use this idea to solve an equation that otherwise wouldn't factor or couldn't use the quadratic formula to solve it. So, moving on to the second part. Okay. Now, despite everything we've been learning up to now, if you are solving by completing the square, okay, so you see this here, you do not make your equation equal 0. You want to move any non-x terms to the other side. So if I have x squared plus 6x plus 5, the 5 does not have an x, so I move him over. So now, here's my new equation. Now I'm going to take what I did in the first part, and I'm going to find a new c. And leave myself a little space. So remember I take half of this, which is 3, and I square it to get 9. So I'm going to add 9 here. Now whatever I do to one side of the equation, I'm also going to add to the other side. Now I'm going to rewrite this equation. It was x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals, I'm going to actually do -5 plus 9, which is 4. This is going to factor into, I'm going to come over a little bit, x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 4. Okay, now I'm going to have to scroll down. So I'm going to have to erase all this. So pause if you need to before I make all the writing go away. Okay, so I had this. X plus 3 equals 4. So I'm going to rewrite this as x plus 3 squared equals 4. Now I'm ready for step 4. To get rid of the little exponent of 2, I'm going to square root both sides, because that'll cancel this power of 2 out. And now I have x plus 3 equals plus or minus 2. and now solve any equation or equations that are left. So I'm actually going to have two equations. X plus 3 equals the positive 2, and x plus 3 equals the negative 2. Now I just solve them. So I get x equals negative 5. That's one answer. And, oh, that doesn't equal negative 5. What am I saying? That equals negative 1. But this one equals negative 5. And so those are my two answers. Now, this is a great way to do problems that won't factor. Okay, so this is kind of a way to work around the quadratic formula. So you might get some not great answers in these. If you get nice answers, that just means that your equation would have factored. So if I look at this equation here, I can't really do much. Well, all right, we'll just work with it. Okay, so I have, actually, I am going to move down. Okay, write this next example down. I'm going to go on to a new page. I guess I can just move it to there. Okay. So, I have, okay, so I'm going to, now it says to do it by completing the square. So I'm not going to try to factor this. I'm going to get all the numbers without letters onto the other side. So I have m squared minus 4m equals 21. Let's come over here. Now I want to complete the square. So give myself some space. Take half of this, which is negative 2, square it, and I get 4. So I add 4 to both sides. Okay, now this left side factors into m minus 2. Now notice also, whatever I squared is what's going to wind up in the parentheses. So you can just jump right to that if you want. And now, I'll come up here since I'm running out of room. I have m minus 2 squared equals 25. I want to solve this. I'm going to square root both sides. M minus 2 equals plus or minus 5. Set up my two equations. One positive 5, one negative 5. And solve them both. And I get 7. And I get negative 3. Okay, so that's completing the square.